Speaking of running backs, James Cook. He made a comment on social media last week. He's looking for $15 million a year. He was on the Nightcap podcast with Shannon Sharp and Chad Ochocinco talking about his contract. He just wants what's fair. The problem is the collective bargaining agreement creates boundaries to a player getting what's fair. What's fair is what he would get on the open market. But when you've got a 4-year contract that is standard, you can't negotiate 3 years or 2 years. You can't negotiate year to year. If you're drafted, it is a CBA agreed 4-year contract. Then the CBA allows, if you're not a first round pick, and Cook was not a first round pick, the team to apply the franchise tag. Then after 1 tag, 2 tags, maybe 2 tags, maybe 1 tag, then you get your shot, like Saquon Barkley did. Saquon Barkley had to go the full 5 years because he was a first-round pick. So they did the 4-year contract, 5th-year option, 6-year franchise tag, and then the Giants finally decided, in lieu of giving him a 20% raise over his first-year franchise tag, to tag and trade him or keep him or do a long-term deal, they'd let him walk away. So before Cook has a shot to get his true fair market value, he's got to put in 2 more seasons. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay effective. You got to hope the wear and tear doesn't start to diminish his overall value. It's not in his interest to hold out. The CBA now takes away, I think, immediately. You used to have a little window to hold out before you would lose a year of credit toward free agency. Now, if you're under contract and you don't show up, you lose the year of credit toward free agency. He would not be a free agent next March 2026 if he fails to show up for training camp. A hold in is a greater possibility. He shows up, contract negotiations continue. He doesn't practice until he gets his contract. But the risk you run there is if the 2 sides don't work out a deal, then you get into that awkwardness that we saw with Jamar Chase and the Bengals last year, where time to play. Are you going to play? Or are you not going to play? Are we going to fine you for not practicing? How do we work that part of it out? That's where it becomes awkward and potentially ugly. But I think that is where it might be heading if the Bills don't give Cook the contract he believes he has earned, even though the Bills have ways to prevent him from getting fair value. And with running backs, we know what can happen. Often, now, Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs have defied this, but often you've already had your best years before you're eligible to get paid. And you try to get the team to pay you based upon the hope that you'll continue to play the way you have. History tells us that plenty of running backs can't. Recent history tells us the great running backs can. Barkley, Henry, Jacobs. But Cook still has 2 years to go, minimum, before he can leverage the kind of exit that those guys experienced. Something to keep an eye on. Will they pay him sooner or later? What are they going to do with Josh Allen's contract? Big cap number this year. He's averaging $43 million a year. He's woefully underpaid. I know that the powers that be in Buffalo don't like it when we point out, facts. But the reigning MVP at $43 million a year is dramatically underpaid. And at some point, the only way to get his cap numbers under control, because what they do with these contracts, they load up the cash early, they engineer the cap numbers to be low, and then they'll worry about the rise in the cap number because those dollars you get early, if they don't hit the cap then, they're going to hit the cap later. You got to figure out how to deal with it. They did a restructuring last year. You can only do the restructuring thing so often before you end up with a cap number. You're like, we just have to deal with this. What do we do here? Do we just take a year where we're in cap purgatory? I remember that was a term back in the late 90s. Over the past 20, 25 years, teams have figured out how to put their best effort on the field even when there's discomfort when it relates to the cap. There's definitely discomfort when it relates to Allen's contract and Cook at $5 million for 2025. He's going to be looking for more sooner rather than later. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.